Hey guys, I'm back with the second video in the Let's Solve Tactics series. So yeah, we are solving tactics on chess.com, and last time I had reached a rating of 504. So let's get started. Let's see how far we can take this today. Okay, so black to play. The first thing I notice is there is a bishop that's loose, unprotected on b5. So this one. And I seem to have a standard, oops, how do I do this? Yeah, forking idea, queen a5 check followed by capturing. I think he can respond to the check by blocking with the queen or moving the king or blocking with the pawn on c3, but I don't think that matters. One thing to note is he does have possible counterplay later on with queen to h5 check. So let's calculate. So queen a5 check. Let's say pawn to c3. I take his bishop. He goes queen h5 check. At the very least, I can block with the pawn, and I should be okay. So yeah, let's do this, and I can take this. By the way, what I did there is very important. So instead of just seeing that I can win the bishop and patting myself on the back and playing the move, I took a moment to see what might happen after I grab his bishop. Does he have anything that is fatal to my position? And he did have a check, but I determined that I'm not getting checkmated. If you can imagine, if I didn't have this g pawn and didn't have this knight on e7, queen h5, if you can imagine a position where, let's say there's a bishop on g7, and this knight on e7 is missing, then queen h5 would actually possibly lead to some trouble. It wouldn't. I'll be able to escape. But the point is, you need to see further than what is obvious and make sure that you are not getting into trouble just because you took a piece. Okay, let's go to the next one. So my queen is attacked. Taking on h3 is checkmate. Straightforward. Okay. I'm trying to move a little fast on this one, seeing if I can, gain a lot of rating points in this session. So, okay, first thing to notice is this battery with the queen and bishop, bishop and queen lined up against his king position. So queen g2 unfortunately cannot be played because the knight covers it. But queen h1, on the other hand, looks like a nice handy-dandy checkmate. Okay, let's keep moving. So I notice my queen and my rook lined up on this f2 square. So queen takes f2 suggests itself. Queen takes f2, king goes to h1. I check him on f1. He captures me. I capture him, and that is mate. Okay. Also, for those of you who would like to, who are in the beginning stages where these kind of tactics problems are still challenging for you, but you are trying to learn, I would suggest that when I get to a new problem, try and pause the video and solve it yourself. That would really help out. So I know I didn't start out the video saying this, but from this problem onwards, I will try to give you a few seconds pause where you have the opportunity to pause the video before you hear my thoughts. Take it as a challenge, solve the position, come to your own conclusions, and then play to see what I played. Okay, so if you would like to pause your video, you can do so now. Black has just captured the pawn on d4, and it's white to play. You can pause your video now. So yeah, I hope that you did pause your video. So I noticed this knight, which is deep in the black position, and it is well poised to deliver a fork from e7, hitting the king and the queen. So that is my obvious instinct. Quickly seeing if there is anything better. I don't think I have anything because queen takes c4, even though it's a check. Well, we'll lose the queen to him capturing. So knight e7 it is. Okay, let's go to the next one. So yeah, if you would like to try this on your own and pause the video, you can do so now. So I noticed this pressure on the e file. We have our queen and rook lined up against his knight and also his king behind that. If his queen were not to be on d8, then queen takes e7 would be made, but the queen defends the knight, so no luck there. So his rook on d6 is a bit of a target because it's being attacked already by my queen, but it is defended by his rook. Also, there's obviously the spin on the e file. There's also this check on h8. But quickly, let's examine the check. I don't think it works. Queen h8, rook g8. Actually, it does. Okay. So queen h8, he has to block with the rook because the knight is still pinned. So rook g8, and I can take his rook, and he's not able to capture back, and that is checkmate. Okay. Okay, new problem. White to play. You can pause your video if you would like to. Okay, so I notice that my queen is hitting this pawn on d5, and if I take it, it'll be a check. So he needs to move his king because blocking with the rook would not work well. So queen takes d5, king h1. Now knight f7 suggests itself. So let's say knight f7, it's a check. Now he has two options there. He can either take my knight with the rook or bring his king to g8. If he brings the king to g8, then if you notice, if you notice, my queen on d5 would be lined up with his king on g8. There'll be a knight in the middle. So wherever I move the knight, it'll be a discovered check. And that often leads to a very nice checkmating pattern called the smothered mate. So I will have knight to h6 double check in that position. He'll have to move his king to the corner again. And there I can sacrifice my queen with queen to g8 check. His rook will be forced to capture because my knight on h6 guards the g8 square, so he cannot take back with the king. Once his rook captures, his king on h8 will be boxed in by his rook on g8, and I'll be able to checkmate him with knight to f7. And if after queen takes d5, king h8, knight takes f7, knight to f7 check. If he captures my knight, then I do have I guess I don't have queen to d8 because queen on h4 covers the d8 square. So I guess I can just take his rook and I have won an exchange, meaning I got his rook for my knight. In that position, how is the material situation? I have an extra rook, but black will have a bishop for it, which looks good. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and play that because I don't see anything else better. Okay. Okay, so if you would like to pause your video and think for yourself, you can do it now. So we have a situation where his king has no moves. So my bishop, protected by my knight, totally stalemates his king. So we should probably start thinking about the king situation and see if we can have any tactical opportunities associated with that. So let's see what are the candidate moves. Of course, I mean, taking his knight also makes a lot of sense. That is the most obvious thing I notice. He can also take the knight on d5. So we are spoiled for choice here. You know, queen takes g4, pawn takes, you know, c takes d5. What else? What are our other candidate moves? I am a little nervous about this position, to be honest, because of all these seemingly great moves we have available. So because all of them cannot be the answer, you know, it's only one correct move. So we need to find it. Okay, so let's make a list of candidate moves here. So with my queen, I have taking on g4. I don't see too many other moves with the queen. I don't see any other moves with the queen that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there are slow moves like queen to d3 with the idea of moving my bishop, let's say to g8, and then going to h7 with the mate. But that looks too slow, and black will be able to respond at a minimum with one of his knights to f6. So that doesn't seem correct. Taking his knight on g4, he probably again comes back with the d knight to f6, hitting my queen and my bishop. And in that case, I can go to the h file. So queen g4, knight f6, queen to h4. Now I'm threatening a discovery with the bishop, followed by queen h7. And if he takes my bishop, I will take with the queen on h7. So I'm looking at queen g4, knight f6, queen h4. And that looks winning, but does black have anything better after queen g4? I am threatening queen h4 or queen h5 in that position as well. Basically just bringing my queen closer to this king because there is this open h file, you know, leading up to his king. So queen g4, he could try a move like f6, but I mean, queen takes knight, f6. I can again go to h5 with my queen. If he takes my knight, I have bishop g6 check, followed by a mate on h7. Yeah, I don't see anything better, and I'm gonna go ahead and take this. Okay, well, after all that thinking, it didn't make us play any further, but at least we got it right. Okay, so next problem, if you would like to think, you can pause the video now. So this one looks like a mate in one, so I'm not gonna talk too much and play the mate. Okay, so in this position, I notice immediately that my rook and queen are lined up against his rook. There is, of course, a knight in the middle, but the knight could be removed with check, you know. So, for example, knight to g3 check. And also his king is pretty short of squares. So it only has the e2 square because this bishop cuts off, you know, the g1 and f2 squares from the king. So knight to g3 check is the first candidate that I'm going to calculate. He has to capture because he cannot go anywhere. Notice that the knight uncovers my queen and bishop. So he captures, and then I take his rook on e1. Okay, and we have reached over 600 rating. Okay, so a position. Okay, again, white to play. If you would like to pause, you can do so now. We are down in material quite a bit. So Black has an extra rook. So also our queen is under attack. Taking the rook will not work because the rook is protected by the pawn and the queen. His king is pretty open. Rook h1 kind of suggests itself. Queen h4 might be a move. Queen h4 not so much because he has rook h5 maybe. So okay, other than rook h1, any other candidate moves? Let's see. Queen h4, as I mentioned, could be a candidate. Taking his knight, of course, doesn't work because he takes my queen. So that's not a candidate. This knight is on the queen side, well placed, but kind of far from the action on the king side. So I think rook h1 seems to be the right candidate move. So let's calculate though. So rook h1 check. King to g8 would be forced. There is no other moves. He cannot come to g7 because of the pawn. So king to g8. And now, well, I can take his pawn on g6 with my queen. Check. If he blocks with the queen on g7, I capture it with the queen and that'll be mate. So he needs to now go to f8, in which case my rook drops down to h8, and that is checkmate. So rook h1, king, oops, let's try again. Rook h1, king g8, queen g7, king f8, and rook h8. That is checkmate because the f pawn covers the e7 square. Okay. Okay, let's go. Again, similar to the first problem of this session, I see the bishop is hanging and there is a standard trick with a fork with the queen, which picks up the bishop. And I don't think he has any dangerous follow-ups. Okay, let's go to the next one. So first thing I notice about this position is this bishop on b3, which is being attacked by my rook and is protected by his king. Could be a tactical liability. Second thing I notice is that my rook on f8 is lined up against his pawn on f2, especially if I take this bishop, which is protecting the pawn currently. If I take this bishop with check, he takes back either with the rook or the pawn, and I will be able to crash through on f2, and that'll be a check. So in response to rook takes f2 check, if he moves his king somewhere, this bishop on b3 will be up for grabs for free. So if he blocks with rook d2, so just to reiterate, I'm looking at first move, knight takes e3 check. Let's say he captures with the rook. I capture on f2 check. He blocks the check with his rook. Now I can take his rook on d2. He takes back and I win his bishop. I don't think there would be anything else that's better in this position. So let's do that. Yeah, we can give this check. The main purpose of this check is to distract the king from the protection of this bishop. As I mentioned, it's a tactical liability. I take, and the king would be, the problem stops here, but the king would be forced to capture my rook, in which case the bishop on b3 hangs, and I can just take it. Again, we see a hanging bishop on e5, and there is this familiar queen fork pattern. So queen h5 check. Now black has choices. He can move his king to f8 or to d7. Right? No other moves. e7 is covered. Okay, so let's say he goes to d7. I could take his bishop or I could throw in a check. I'm not sure what is best. So if I throw in a check with f5, oops, sorry, queen to f5, he can move up the board to b5 or go back to e8. If he goes back to e8, then I can take the bishop with check on e5 and follow it up with taking his rook at a minimum. At a minimum, I have that. But if he goes to after queen h5, king d7, queen f5, if he goes to c6, he could also go to d6 actually. Okay, he can go to d6, and on d6 I don't think I have any checks other than capturing his bishop, which I don't believe leads to anything. So I don't think this whole queen f5 idea is necessarily that great. So what if I don't go queen f5? So queen h5 check. Let's say king d7, queen takes bishop. His rook is attacked. My knight is protected for now. His rook cannot move. He could block with his knight, but then my knight on d5 takes his knight on f6. So that seems to be pretty good. What if he goes to f8, queen h5, king f8? I think I again take his bishop and be happy. Okay, fine. I definitely wasted a bit of energy there calculating some unnecessary variations, but that is okay. I think it's good to see if you have more than just winning a piece. If the position was slightly different, I could have checkmated him, but okay. Next position, if you would like to pause, do so now. So I noticed that his rook on f4 is attacked once by my queen and protected by his queen, which could be a problem. Also, his king is somewhat short of squares because it cannot go back because my rook on d2 covers the d2 square, or sorry, the rook on e2 covers the d2 square. So the king can only go to b3 in this particular position. So also his rook on a1 is hanging. Not sure if that's relevant, but this rook is hanging. What are the candidate moves? Queen e5 check could be something. Definitely a check, so it has to be looked at. Rook takes c2, rook takes pawn check could be something, but on the first glance doesn't look like it's the right move. With the c8 rook, I don't see any appealing candidates. There could be a quiet move like rook b8 covering, taking away the b3 square, but I don't think we should start there. Let's start with queen e5 check. So queen e5 check, he can either move his king or block. Now, blocking with the rook or the queen will be disastrous because I can take that piece with the pawn and continue checking. So that's not good. So he either blocks with the pawn. If he blocks with the pawn, so pawn to d4. So queen e5, pawn to d4. I can take that with check. So pawn takes pawn check. And that also hits his queen. So at a minimum, I'm going to win his queen there. So he cannot block this way. He should move his king. And if he moves his king, we have this rook b8 move that we talked about. Now, yeah, rook b8. Now, blocking with the queen will not be great, so he probably needs to move his king again. He can go to a4 or a2. If he goes to a2, queen takes b2 will be mate because my rook on b8 will guard b2. So if he goes to a4, then I do have queen e8 check. Queen e8 check. He needs to capture on a5. Is that the best I have after queen a4? Or is there something better? or sorry, king a4. So king a4, queen e8 check makes sense actually. Queen e8 check. King takes a5. We are getting pretty deep into the position. His king is totally cut off. Not sure how to finish him off. So far, we have not won anything, and we have lost a pawn. His king has captured on a5. So our queen is on e8. His king is on a5. The only check I have there that doesn't lose anything is rook to a8 check. So rook to a8 check. Now he has to go to b6, king to b6. So his king is being brought further down the board. And once king to b6 happens, we can involve this rook, which has been hanging out at e2. We can bring it back to e6 and check him. So rook to e6 check. Yeah, I am actually going to play that out because it's clear, I think, to me that queen e5 and rook b3, or sorry, queen e5 and rook b2, b8 have to be the first two moves. So let's play that out. And well, it doesn't make us go any further, but I'm very curious. So I'm gonna analyze. I hope you are able to see this. Yeah, I'm guessing you are. Okay. So queen e5, king b3, rook b8. Now it says mate in 6 for king a4. Queen e8 is correct. King takes b5 is correct. Now rook a8 check. I think I went wrong with that. I missed queen d8 check. I have to be honest, it was getting a little difficult to visualize that. So something I need to improve upon. That's why this channel is called the Improving Chess Player, because it's not just you guys that are improving, it's me. And hopefully, by sharing my journey of improvement, you also gain something out of it. So here, yeah, it's obvious that coming down to a6 leads to queen b6 check. Going up, I'm just following this line. Queen d7 check, king e5, queen c7 check, king a4, queen a7 check finally, and he has to block. And that is a long checkmate. Mate in 8. So not that long, but yeah, I would hope that I would have found it, but I'm not certain. Okay, let's go back to our main position. Okay. Okay, so black to play. If you would like to pause your video, do so now. So first thing I notice is this rook is attacked twice by my rook and queen, and also protected twice. So it could lead to some tactical opportunities. Also, this knight on d3 is attacked once and protected once. So this queen is overloaded, okay? Because this queen on d1 has the job of defending the knight as well as the rook, and it cannot do both very well. So how do we exploit this? Queen takes a1 is a candidate. Let's look at queen takes a1. So queen takes rook. He takes back. He'll be attacking our rook. At that point, I have given up my queen for a rook, so I need to take back. I need to take his queen. He takes back, and then I can take the knight on d3. So what's the material count there? So I have given up my queen and rook, and I have gotten his queen and rook, but at the end I've also obtained his juicy knight on d3. So that works. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, a position where we immediately notice that this queen on d8 is totally trapped. So let's take on c6 and win this. Okay. Next one again. Sorry, I forgot to do this the last time. If you would like to pause your video, do so now. I see that the king is boxed in. Also, I'm hitting his bishop, and his queen is in the vicinity of our king. So he himself has some threats. For example, yeah, actually, I'm not going to give any examples, but it's a position where, you know, I have to be aware of all the checks that his queen can give. Also, his pawns are pretty close to becoming new queens themselves. Okay. So, a position that probably requires some care. Queen f6 and queen takes f7 are two moves that suggest themselves. Queen f6, check. He has to block with his bishop. There is no other move. The queen cuts off all the squares of the king. So this. Now I notice there is queen f8 check after that, and that is checkmate because the king is completely boxed by his own pieces. Okay. White to move again. If you would like to think about this position, do so now. Okay. I spot that the bishop on f5 takes away the h7 square, which means there are back rank issues for this king. Also, my queen and my rook are trained on this a8 square. So rook to a8 suggests itself. Rook to a8 check. Now, he has a few options to respond to that. He can take my rook, or he can block on c8 with either the bishop or the rook, or he can also block on f8, let's say, with the queen. Obviously, losing the queen just for my rook doesn't make as much sense, so we can expect him to play something else. So let's look at his options. So rook to a8. Also, I'm not sure how to remove these arrows once I've drawn them. How do I do that? Yep, nope, I do not know. Okay, fine. Maybe I'll look it up before I make my next video. But so rook to a8 check. He takes a rook, let's say. That's the first option. We take with the queen. Now it makes sense for him to block on f8. Now we have a clever little tactic. We can go bishop to h7 check, forcing his king to separate from his queen, and we take his queen. At the end of all that, we have won his queen and his bishop for our rook and our bishop. So we win a queen basically for our rook. But he has rook c1 check, but fortunately we have the g2 square available, and we are not getting checkmated. And his pawn on d3, his pawn could be pushed to d3, but I don't think that will be necessarily fatal. So okay, that was rook a8, rook bishop takes a8. What if he blocks on c8 with, let's say, the bishop? So rook a8, bishop c8. Well, at a minimum, I can take his bishop with my rook. He captures and I capture, in which case I have won a bishop. What if he blocks on c8 with the rook after rook a8? Same thing, I guess. I can take his rook with my rook. He takes with his bishop and I take back. I think I'm content with all that. Other moves that I could consider, I'm not sure if queen takes bishop leads to anything. No, I don't think so. Okay, he's going down the straightforward line. And here, it is very important that we see this. distracting his king from the protection of the queen, and we win. Okay, white to play. If you would like to pause, do so now. So I notice this bishop that just moved from d6 to c5, and by doing so, black has managed to put it in a position where it is not being protected at all. And as we know, loose pieces drop off. So queen to c4 check. It's a fork between his king and his loose bishop, and I'm going to win the bishop. Okay, well, I've reached 700, and I think this video probably has gotten a bit long. Good time to call it a day, and I will see you next time. Bye.